white paper called Playing and Learning to Win that is available in the announcements section on the TAC site. And that'll give you a lot more detailed information about some of the material that I'm covering today. My name is Brian Schulman, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called LTS Education Systems. And we've been around 14 years. All we do is digital game-based learning, and we've focused heavily throughout the company's life on adaptive technology with the goal to reach and teach struggling learners. And we're going to cover some of the things that we're seeing in trends today and how they impact today's digital learner. So in the past, many of us, including myself, this is how we learned when we were in school with the chalkboard. Today's schools look dramatically different with all the technologies, and I'm sure over time that those tablets will even change and become more virtual in nature as well. Also, we all used to use pencils, and you know, now when you go into schools, everybody uses more and more technology. I'll go back and tell you a quick story about pencils, which is kind of interesting, and believe it or not, and also is applicable to what we're seeing today. So this is a true story. After the Depression, money was so tight in the state of New York that students were not allowed to bring pencils to school. The pencils were all held by the teachers, and they were only given out to the students when there were tests. There was two main reasons for this. One was the fact that some students did not have enough money to bring a pencil, to buy a pencil and bring a pencil, and they wanted to have everything fair for every student. But the other reason was the teachers felt like the students were not paying attention because they were writing notes and scribbling and all sorts of things. And so they would hold all the pencils and then only give the pencils out to the students when they wanted them. I know that sounds crazy. It is a true story. But can you imagine in today's world that you'd never want your students taking as many notes as possible? Well, how does that apply to today? I can't tell you how many schools I walk into today now who still outlaw phones and will not let students use their phones. I understand they don't want them texting, they don't want them calling people, but the power and the information that's available in a student's phone now, smartphone, is so incredible that I hope, you know, some of this will prompt you to be thinking about how we all need to change and embrace more of this technology and really deliver the tools that today's digital natives need dramatically. So if you think for a second what's driven some of this, well, a lot of it's been driven by innovation. And what's innovation? It's when there's something new, it's original, it's improved, but it's got to create value. Can you imagine, I don't know if any of you guys remember DEC, Digital Equipment Company, but they were, you know, one of the largest companies in the world at the time in the late 70s. And they ran all these mainframe computers, and Ken Olsen was the founder of the company and worth a ton of money. And he felt like there would be no reason why anyone would want a computer in their home. And I know that sounds crazy. Now we can't think of not having a computer with us everywhere we go by using our cell phones. So let me go back and talk a little bit more about innovation for a second and how things change. And if you don't change with them, you die. In the old days, there were ice harvesters who would literally cut out ice and pack it in sawdust and then ship it to customers. And they were so focused on getting better saws to cut the ice, better shipping methods, better packing methods, that they didn't realize that a company had come along and was actually manufacturing their own ice in a company. And so and the ice harvesters basically were out of business overnight, and everybody started purchasing their ice from the ice manufacturing companies, And then the ice manufacturing guys were focused on, well, how can we ship this ice, better, build more factories, all this kind of stuff. While that was taking place, Westinghouse comes along and builds a refrigerator with its own ice maker, and so the ice manufacturers are basically out of business right away. And that's exactly what innovation does, and that's exactly what's happening in today's schools. Think about for a second your own life for a moment and about how technology has completely changed what you've done for years and years and years. My kids will never need to learn how to balance a checkbook because the website does it for them. So, none of us balance our checkbooks anymore, I don't think. I pay all of my bills online. I don't even know. I have like one checkbook for, crazy things that I have to send in for my kids' school, and that's it. And most of my gifts I purchase online. And that's just in our, it's just a couple of examples in our own lives. Now let's think about how it's impacted the schools. Grade books, testing, and skill acquisition, all of that now is being driven by technology, where in the past it was all done manually. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the three areas where I think technology is dramatically impacting schools for a variety of reasons, and how the combination of these three can have a tremendous impact on learning in your environment. Game-based learning, utilizing adaptive technology, and then how we can take advantage of your custom educational resources to impact students. So let's talk for a second about digital game-based learning. I'm not sure if any of you folks are familiar with Oculus Rift, but it is a new technology that is absolutely incredible. And I will do my best to show you this video and let you listen to it for a second. Although it looks like my internet connection is a little bit slow. Oculus Rift is basically a headset that looks like this right here, and it's connected to a computer, and it basically allows you to live in a virtual world. And there's all sorts of new games that have come along now, and the one that I thought would be maybe the neatest one to show you is this is a grandmother, and I guess she's a little bit afraid of heights, and she is wearing Oculus Rift and taking a trip on a roller coaster, although it looks like this is really slow. Well, in the interest of time, I'll tell you the story instead of making you wait. If you get a chance, this website, this presentation is online. You can look at this. I'd encourage you to go and check out Oculus Rift for one reason. More and more of your students in the future are going to expect a virtual experience, an almost lifelike experience in their classrooms, because they're getting this at home when they're playing video games. And it's one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced. It's literally as if you are riding in an actual roller coaster. It's incredible, and the cost will be driven down. I think Google is also building something similar, working with Oculus to do this, and you're going to see more and more of that coming. So I think one of the things that's important for you to think about is, what am I trying to achieve if we use and utilize digital game-based learning? It has to be focused on improving academic outcomes. Now, I want to go through here and talk a little bit about the value of gaming, and I'm pulling some information. You'll see in the bottom left-hand corner here references to studies. I did this because I wanted you to know this isn't just me talking. This is research done from all over the world. And so one of the most powerful aspects of the value of gaming is in the motivation and engagement. And if you can combine that with adaptivity, in this simulation, you get this incredible, powerful ability to gather data at a massive scale. and you're able to do this in an engaging way for students. That then drives improved outcomes. From this 2013 study, they found that boys read at above grade level, 2 grade levels above when playing a video game as opposed to taking a standardized test. However, I'll tell you that it's about 50-50 split now in the world as far as male and females playing games. Games like Candy Crush and Angry Birds have really moved the gaming world out of just the hardcore gamers and just the males to do more and more with females. I'm sure a lot of folks on the phone call here have played games online as well, so you're familiar with what I'm describing. Another study, I've got hundreds of these studies. We're not going to cover all of them. I just wanted to give you a little bit here. Another one is there was 60% motivation increase when games were involved in the educational process. That's from a 12-month study of 500 teachers. This is back in 2009. What the other thing that games can do is allow you to really build on 21st century skills. It allows for more collaboration, more problem solving, and procedural thinking in a way that's very different than an unstructured classroom environment, which is incredibly powerful for you as you're trying to do your job. Let's stop for a second and think about why these are so powerful. So when you think about Candy Crush and Angry Birds and why they were so addicting, you start playing them, you're like, why am I doing this, and have I just lost 30 minutes of my life playing some video game? There's actually something called a compulsion loop, where it builds on pattern recognition and you gain this disproportionate feedback. And then these games also give all of us, it gives us autonomy, which is so powerful for today's digital learner. At the heart of it, though, is something called fiero, which is basically the rush of excitement that you receive from playing a video game and overcoming a challenge. It actually dates all the way back to, they think, the caveman era, when you would kill an animal and you would have this kind of feeling. I'll tell you that there's also been research done that this is the same kind of feeling that a lot of people get from doing certain drugs and all sorts of things. And so it's a very, very addictive and powerful tool, and it helps. And it drives this feeling of triumph over adversity, which, if channeled correctly, can be incredibly helpful. The reason why this can be so helpful and the addictive aspect is so positive is because it can also teach hard work and achievement values, and you're driving this mental resilience, and it can also drive social resilience through playing the games. I want to take just a second here and have you guys think about what takes place in your schools today and the cost of failure being so high that students are often discouraged to take risks. Think about testing and think about how important that is and how valuable it is if they do well and how much pressure it is on the teachers and on the students. Now you compare that in a contrast to what students do in playing video games. In a video game, they're trying as fast as possible to get through it and find the way that they can get through it. And if they, in a lot of these video games, you have a number of lives. And so every time you get killed or you fall off a cliff or something, one of your lifelines is gone. But you come right back and start again. And so failure the cost of failure is so much lower in video games that it makes students motivated to explore all their options, which is so powerful in the learning process. I don't know if you guys were ever in one of these classes, but when I was younger, I was the one in the back of the room that was always, cutting up and making noise, and invariably once a week I would be called out by the teacher, and she would ask me to come up front, since I seemed to know all the answers, and would solve a problem on the board. I didn't really care about that kind of stuff. It was fine, but there was a lot of kids that had that happen to them that they completely shut down. Today we would never do things like this because we don't want kids to get intimidated and all that. And in a video game, you get so much freedom And there's countless stories we could tell you about how kids relax and become comfortable in a video game with failure, and they're able to learn more. So let's talk for a second now specifically about the different kinds of games. So for the most part, everyone's familiar with two forms of games, short form and long form gaming. In short form gaming, you have short brain breaks of game time after there's been some sort of academic achievement. The value to this is it's simple to implement in your classrooms. It's typically very low cost. It's a very flexible solution, and it's low risk. And what I mean by low risk is it doesn't really impact your classroom very much. And so if it's not well received by your students or it doesn't seem to be making the impact you want, you haven't really disrupted a massive amount in your classroom. The ramp here, what's important is that you want to get this implemented into your schools and with some kind of a strategy with some flexibility, and get some small, easy wins so that we can start to build some momentum and take advantage of the short form games and how they can impact your learning. The best use of short form gaming is typically skill acquisition. And not sure how many are Giant versus Jet fans, but I had to pick one. So why would I put up Eli Manning here? So Eli does, in the past, granted maybe this year he's not doing great, but in the past he's done a fantastic job in, driving the length of the field, throwing touchdown passes, leading the offense, scoring touchdowns, and winning games, including 2 Super Bowls. What people don't see is the massive amount of time that Eli and his brother Peyton and all of those quarterbacks spend on skill acquisition. They spend a tremendous amount of time on footwork, arm strength and passes and where to go and reading defense, because all of those things are skill acquisition, and they're not a lot of fun. The fun stuff is what you do on Sundays in winning games. But you've got to do the skill acquisition to be successful. It's just like that in learning and in school. It's not fun to sit and do a bunch of times tables or working on all the different skill areas that you have to do well on. But your best students do that. Your best students master that skill so they can be successful and start moving towards more of the quadrant D of Dr. Daggett's 4 quadrants and more real-world application. So if you think for a second about some of the skill acquisition piece here, you've got, multiple choice questions specific to certain skills that have to be obtained. You've got now the technology enhanced items with drag and drop and fill in the blank, and the list goes on and on. I think there's 14 different types of new tech enhanced items. That then would drive into these old flash games in the past, which aren't very engaging just because of the look and feels changed dramatically. Now you've got new HTML5 games, which are a lot more like what the kids are playing on their phones and tablets today. So after you've answered those questions and worked on your skill acquisition, you then earn some game time and give you that short brain break. So what you want to do is first do something different and then do it better. And so get you a small win and then start to ramp up. So now let's talk for just a minute about long-form gaming. And they're more immersive games that encompass more teaching. They are lengthier. They can be disruptive to implement, and the teacher typically has to be involved. Products like Dreambox and DragonBox are fantastic programs. They're a little bit more in-depth, and so the teacher will need to be involved. Probably the best example would be Minecraft. And I think you'll see Minecraft do even more in schools now, especially now that Google has bought them. So you'll see more and more of that coming. Pretty powerful. Some of you may already use that, use Minecraft. Really neat. But you have to have a teacher who can embrace it and really implement it properly. You can't just give it to students and expect them just to learn on their own. The teacher has to be more involved. the value is in these kind of programs is there is more real-world application. There is a new approach that we're seeing out now called medium form gaming, and it's kind of a hybrid between the two, as you would expect. It's more instruction focused, but it's still shorter, like the short form gaming, and it's more modular, so it's easier to implement, and it's inexpensive, and it's more flexible. So if you think about using a basketball game to teach perimeter and area and things like that, that's where these kind of medium form games now are coming into play, to where you're seeing more and more of these modular type programs, which might be 15 to 20 minutes, where a Minecraft might be 6 weeks worth of work. So when you're making some decisions on what we're going to do as far as utilizing game-based learning, let me just take a second to give you a couple of tips here that, if you're not familiar, hopefully will help. You definitely want to move to HTML5. You do not want to be utilizing Flash-based programs. Flash does not run on tablets and can be very cumbersome, so make sure that the products you're looking at are device agnostic. Figure out what you want to do in your technology plan. Are you going to let students bring their own devices, or are you going to purchase them for them? When you do implement technology, just know that your bandwidth is going to be impacted pretty dramatically. Just because you're wired, all of a sudden you start giving 30 students per class access to the web through these devices, and your bandwidth requirements are going to go way up. And it's also great to find out, do the tools that you're buying, do they have access at home, and what kind of connection is there? And then lastly, really covering with the vendor that you're talking to, what's their professional development plan? What's their plan for today, and then what's their plan for the future? Because when you make decisions with gaming, you're really making decisions for the future. It's not like a textbook where you buy it and that's the end of it. It really is about the future and having conversations with them about that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about adaptive learning and the power of the adaptive engine. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. All of you do this already. You teach in an adaptive manner because you're interacting with a student, they're talking to you, and you have the ability to adjust the material based on the student's ability, and that's exactly what an adaptive engine does for you as well. These next few slides come from a study out of MIT. The power of the adaptive engines today is that the assessment can be ongoing. It's not, you're seeing less and less of the formative type assessment, and you're seeing more and more of the ongoing assessment, because the feedback can be frequent and constant and incredibly powerful, and it's the best utilization of time when you've got your students using the program and they're constantly being evaluated. One of the key factors, though, is there's got to be a heavy emphasis on foundational skill sequencing, so that when you've got the adaptive technology and you then have this combination with the foundational skill sequencing. So, for example, let's look at a technology education course and a particular standard. And so this is a standard you have to teach in New York. Students will understand the relationships and common themes that connect math, science, and technology. The key idea of the standard is this commencement level, which is identifying patterns of change, and it's necessary for making predictions about future behavior and conditions. Students are going to need to use sophisticated mathematical models, such as graphs and equations of various algebraic or trigonomic functions, search for multiple trends when analyzing data. So this is everything that your student's going to need to do to be successful for that particular standard. And then our product actually unpacks that standard and would actually review for you what you've got to do that makes up that standard. So solving problems involving graphs relates, you can see these on the screen. So what I thought we would do here for just a second is go in and actually look at the product here for just a second. So you can see exactly how this would look for a student. My connection is really slow. I apologize. So I'm logging into a classroom, and I'm selecting a student. Wow, this is so slow. So for this particular, for this particular student, we've set up a custom quiz. And so his particular question, the graph showing the average temperature is misleading for which of the following reasons? And I think she said, so the correct answer was the vertical scale was off. You can see in the coin meter here, I just earned 2 coins for answering that question correctly. And to speed this up, I'm going to just see what these answers are because I had somebody set this up for me. So the student would go through and be answering these skill acquisition type questions, the quad A type questions. We'll be glad to give anyone access to the product to be able to go through yourself and answer some questions and kind of look at the different types of questions that we have in our material based on whatever grade level you want. And I'll just answer one more here. So from there, the student would be able to then go in and play a little bit of a game. This is where you've got that short brain break. And a game would pop up, and this is so slow for some reason. I don't know. So I'll move on because I don't want to waste y'all's time with that. We'll be glad to give you access so you can go in and use the program and see what it looks like. This is how the adaptive engine works kind of behind the scenes, so I'll show you a little report off of this. I realize this isn't high school level, but I just wanted you to see some real hard data. And so on January 20th, we had a student starting out in 4th grade, was not successful. They're answering questions, and the product is unpacking the standard and then dropping them down all the way to 2nd grade level until we can find mastery, and then working our way back up so that 5 days later they're back at the 4th grade level, but now they're answering questions at an 82% rate. So that's how that adaptive engine works for you behind the scenes without you having to do anything. Now I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about custom educational resources. So in the past, you've had, your big 4 or so vendors that were providing all of your instructional material. And this is probably where you were receiving most of your material that you're using to teach your students. Now, there's a lot of new areas that are popping up, or new partners. So you've got Khan Academy, Apple even has a whole area. You've got a lot of MOOCs like MIT and UCLA and others. You guys probably have your own up in New York, and you're utilizing some of those as well. Some of the struggles with that, from what I can gather, has been that some of the material that's on those MOOCs is not the best quality. And so one of the movements that we're seeing now, and this is something that we're heavily focused on, is how we can take advantage of the existing materials that you have created for your districts so that you can utilize those, and we can deliver those to your students because we think you know what your students need better than anybody else. So, for example, we would identify a skill area that a student is struggling in up here at the top. If I can find my mouse. Maybe not. And then within, so this measurement and data, this is for 4th grade, but then within that area, you'd have all of these resources that are available to you, some for free, some you might have to pay for, but then you'd be able to deliver those resources to your student, and then your student would be able to see not only the material from a certain vendor, but also material from inside the district that the district had created. And those materials could be an instructional video, or PDF lessons, or a whole host of tools. So lastly, I just want to cover a little bit about where the future of game-based learning is going and kind of what's going on. We're seeing more and more students creating their own games. We're actually working with numerous schools right now for students to create their own games. We're actually paying students with scholarship fund money, either to the district or to the student, however the district wants to work that, because we want to have students delivering our games as opposed to us paying people from all over the world. So it's pretty exciting stuff. I encourage you to do more and more of that with your own students, whether it be for us or just for themselves. There's more and more virtual reality that's coming along, and you're going to see more and more 21st century center skills. A couple of companies that are doing a really neat job with creating tools that you can use to create games is a company called Tinker, and another one called Click Team. By the way, on this PowerPoint, you just click on each one of these logos, and it'll take you right to their website, so you can go take a look at them. We don't have an affiliation with either one of these companies. I just think they're really great, and you guys can buy their product if you want. It helps you to teach students how to code. And you're going to see more and more coming from Oculus Rift, as I mentioned earlier. You might have seen some of these tools where you've got this augmented reality. You'll be able to, there's a company called 4Dimensional, which is really, really neat stuff here, where you can download their app and actually use it right off your iPad or off your phone. And I encourage you to look at some of that. And a lot of these are free, so it'd be a lot very simple for you to implement in your classroom. So to kind of wrap up as far as what's next, and then I'll take whatever questions there are. I think the biggest key, we're seeing of folks that are successful are folks that will ramp up by getting a small win. They're looking in their district, they're finding their gaming leaders and implementing more and more of that gaming, and letting those leaders drive what could be implemented in your district or in that classroom, and getting some success early and getting some quick wins. Identifying some resources that you want to be deployed, what tools are out there that you've created at your district that you could then go and implement throughout the district-wide, so finding a best practice, and then providing platforms for your teachers to innovate, and giving them the courage to innovate and giving them a platform to do that. So with that, Gretchen, I'll turn it back over. I'm not quite sure how we do the, if there are any questions, but I will be glad to answer any.
Okay, we don't have any questions at this point. If you want to give attendees a couple minutes to type some in, we can do that. And as a reminder to those listening, if you'd like to ask a question, you can type it into the questions pane on your control panel.
And Gretchen, where will the presentation be located?
The presentation, so the recorded webinar along with your PowerPoint, will be located on nyctecenter.org under instructional resources.
That's right. So was going to try to find that. That screen that has that link on it. There we go.
All right, well, it doesn't seem like we have any questions. So on behalf of the Technical Assistance Center, thank you, Brian, for your presentation today.
Thank you.